لا يسبح بحمده ولكن لا تفقهون تسبيحهم إنه كان حليما غفورا وإذا قرأت القرآن جعلنا بينك وبين الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة حجابا مستورا وجعلنا على قلوبهم أكنة أن يفقهوه وفي آذانهم وقرا وإذا ذكرت ربك في القرآن وحده ولوا على أدبارهم نفورا نحن أعلم بما يستمعون به إذ يستمعون إليك وإذ هم نجوى إذ يقول الظالمون إن تتبعون إلا رجلا مسحورا انظر كيف ضربوا لك الأمثال فضلوا فلا يستطيعون سبيلا وقالوا أإذا كنا عظاما ورفاتا أإنا لمبعوثون خلقا جديدا قل كونوا حجارة أو حديدا أو خلقا مما يكبر في صدوركم فسيقولون من يعيدنا قل الذي فطركم أول مرة فسينغضون إليك رؤوسهم ويقولون متى هو قل عسى أن يكون قريبا يوم يدعوكم فتستجيبون بحمده وتظنون إن لبثتم إلا قليلا وقل لعبادي يقولوا التي هي أحسن إن الشيطان ينزغ بينهم إن الشيطان كان للإنسان عدوا مبينا ربكم أعلم بكم إن يشأ يرحمكم أو إن يشأ يعذبكم وما أرسلناك عليهم وكيلا وربك أعلم بمن في السماوات والأرض ولقد فضلنا بعض النبيين على بعض وآتينا داود زبورا قل ادعوا الذين زعمتم من دونه فلا يملكون كشف الضر عنكم ولا تحويلا أولئك الذين يدعون يبتغون إلى ربهم الوسيلة أيهم أقرب ويرجون رحمته ويخافون عذابه إن عذاب ربك كان محذورا وإن من قرية إلا نحن مهلكوها قبل يوم القيامة أو معذبوها عذابا شديدا كان ذلك في الكتاب مسطورا وما منعنا أن نرسل بالآيات إلا أن كذب بها الأولون وآتينا ثمود الناقة مبصرة فظلموا بها وما نرسل بالآيات إلا تخويفا وإذ قلنا لك إن ربك أحاط بالناس وما جعلنا الرؤيا التي أريناك إلا فتنة للناس والشجرة الملعونة في القرآن ونخوفهم فما يزيدهم إلا طغيانا كبيرا وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس قال أأسجد لمن خلقت طينا قال أرأيتك هذا الذي كرمت علي لئن أخرتني إلى يوم القيامة لأحتنكن ذريته إلا قليلا قال اذهب فمن تبعك منهم فإن جهنم جزاؤكم جزاء موفورا واستفزز من استطعت منهم بصوتك وأجلب عليهم بخيلك ورجلك وشاركهم في الأموال والأولاد وعدهم وما يعدهم الشيطان إلا غرورا إن عبادي ليس لك عليهم سلطان وكفى بربك وكيلا ربكم الذي يزجي لكم الفلك في البحر لتبتغوا من فضله إنه كان بكم رحيما وإذا مسكم الضر في البحر ضل من تدعون إلا إياه فلما نجاكم إلى البر أعرضتم وكان الإنسان كفورا أفأمنتم أن يخسف بكم جانب البر أو يرسل عليكم حاصبا ثم لا تجدوا لكم وكيلا أم أمنتم أن يعيدكم فيه تارة أخرى فيرسل عليكم قاصفا من الريح فيغرقكم بما كفرتم ثم لا تجدوا لكم علينا به تبيعا ولقد كرمنا بني آدم وحملناهم في البر والبحر ورزقناهم من الطيبات وفضلناهم على كثير ممن خلقنا تفضيلا يوم ندعو كل أناس بإمامهم فمن أوتي كتابه بيمينه فأولئك يقرؤون كتابهم ولا يظلمون فتيلا ومن كان في هذه أعمى فهو في الآخرة أعمى وأضل سبيلا وإن كادوا ليفتنونك عن الذي أوحينا إليك لتفتري علينا غيره وإذا لاتخذوك خليلا ولولا أن ثبتناك لقد كدت تركن إليهم شيئا قليلا إذا لأذقناك ضعف الحياة وضعف الممات ثم لا تجد لك علينا نصيرا وإن كادوا ليستفزونك من الأرض ليخرجوك منها وإذا لا يلبثون خلافك إلا قليلا سنة من قد أرسلنا قبلك من رسلنا ولا تجد لسنتنا تحويلا أقم الصلاة لدلوك الشمس إلى غسق الليل وقرآن الفجر إن قرآن الفجر كان مشهودا ومن الليل فتهجد به نافلة لك عسى أن يبعثك ربك مقاما محمودا وقل رب أدخلني مدخل صدق وأخرجني مخرج صدق واجعل لي من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا وقل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا وننزل من القرآن ما هو شفاء ورحمة للمؤمنين ولا يزيد الظالمين إلا خسارا وإذا أنعمنا على الإنسان أعرض ونأى بجانبه وإذا مسه الشر كان يئوسا قل كل يعمل على شاكلته فربكم أعلم بمن هو أهدى سبيلا ويسألونك عن الروح قل الروح من أمر ربي وما أوتيتم من العلم إلا قليلا ولئن شئنا لنذهبن بالذي أوحينا إليك ثم لا تجد لك به علينا وكيلا إلا رحمة من ربك إن فضله كان عليك كبيرا قل لئن اجتمعت الإنس والجن على أن يأتوا بمثل هذا القرآن لا يأتون بمثله ولو كان بعضهم لبعض ظهيرا ولقد صرفنا للناس في هذا القرآن من كل مثل فأبى أكثر الناس إلا كفورا وقالوا لن نؤمن لك حتى تفجر لنا من الأرض ينبوعا أو تكون لك جنة من نخيل وعنب فتفجر الأنهار خلالها تفجيرا أو تسقط السماء كما زعمت علينا كسفا أو تأتي بالله والملائكة قبيلا أو يكون لك بيت من زخرف أو ترقى في السماء ولن نؤمن لرقيك حتى تنزل علينا كتابا نقرأه قل سبحان ربي هل كنت إلا بشرا رسولا وما منع الناس أن يؤمنوا إذ جاءهم الهدى إلا أن قالوا أبعث الله بشرا رسولا قل لو كان في الأرض ملائكة يمشون مطمئنين لنزلنا عليهم من السماء ملكا رسولا قل كفى بالله شهيدا بيني وبينكم إنه كان بعباده خبيرا بصيرا ومن يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد لهم أولياء من دونه ونحشرهم يوم القيامة على وجوههم عميا وبكما وصما مأواهم جهنم كلما خبت زدناهم سعيرا ذلك جزاؤهم بأنهم كفروا بآياتنا وقالوا أإذا كنا عظاما ورفاتا أإنا لمبعوثون خلقا جديدا أولم يروا أن الله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض قادر على أن يخلق مثلهم وجعل لهم أجلا لا ريب فيه فأبى الظالمون إلا كفورا قل لو أنتم تملكون خزائن رحمة ربي إذا لأمسكتم خشية الإنفاق وكان الإنسان قتورا ولقد آتينا موسى 9 آيات بينات فاسأل بني إسرائيل إذ جاءهم فقال له فرعون إني لأظنك يا موسى مسحورا قال لقد علمت ما أنزل هؤلاء إلا رب السماوات والأرض بصائر وإني لأظنك يا فرعون مثبورا فأراد أن يستفزهم من الأرض فأغرقناه ومن معه جميعا وقلنا من بعده لبني إسرائيل اسكنوا الأرض فإذا جاء وعد الآخرة جئنا بكم لفيفا وبالحق أنزلناه وبالحق نزل وما أرسلناك إلا مبشرا ونذيرا وقرآنا فرقناه لتقرأه على الناس على مكث ونزلناه تنزيلا قل آمنوا به أو لا تؤمنوا إن الذين أوتوا العلم من قبله إذا يتلى عليهم يخرون للأذقان سجدا ويقولون سبحان ربنا إن كان وعد ربنا لمفعولا ويخرون للأذقان يبكون ويزيدهم خشوعا قل ادعوا الله أو ادعوا الرحمن أيما تدعوا فله الأسماء الحسنى ولا تجهر بصلاتك ولا تخافت بها وابتغ بين ذلك سبيلا وقل الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا أوفوا بالعقود أحلت لكم بهيمة الأنعام إلا ما يتلى عليكم غير محل الصيد إن الله يحكم ما يريد. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تحلوا شعائر الله ولا الشهر الحرام ولا الهدي ولا القلائد ولا آمين البيت الحرام يبتغون فضلا من ربهم ورضوانا وإذا حللتم فاصطادوا ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم أن صدوكم عن المسجد الحرام أن تعتدوا وتعاونوا على البر والتقوى ولا تعاونوا على الإثم والعدوان واتقوا الله إن الله شديد العقاب. حرمت عليكم الميتة والدم ولحم الخنزير وما أهل لغير الله به والمنخنقة والموقوذة والمتردية والنطيحة وما أكل السبع إلا ما ذكيتم وما ذبح على النصب وأن تستقسموا بالأزلام.
'أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ نُهُوا عَنِ النَّجْوَىٰ إِذْ قَالُوا لِصَاحِبِهِمْ لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا وَلَا يَحْزُنكَ قَوْلُهُمْ الَّذِي يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ وَهُوَ خَادِعُهُمْ وَمَا تُخْفِي صُدُورُهُمْ أَكْبَرُ مِمَّا يَعْلَمُونَ.
اليوم يئس الذين كفروا من دينكم فلا تخشوهم واخشوني اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا فمن اضطر في مخمصة غير متجانف لإثم فإن الله غفور رحيم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات لا سيما الشهداء والعلماء نهدي لهم سورة المباركة الفاتحة تسبقها صلوات.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله جميعا. يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا. يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا، يا وجيها يا فاطمة الزهراء، يا بنت محمد، يا قرة عين الرسول، يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا عند الله، يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا، يا أبا محمد، يا حسن بن علي، أيها المجتبى، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا يا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله جميعا، يا وجيها اشفع لنا، يا أبا عبد الله، يا حسين بن علي، أيها الشهيد، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله جميعا، يا وجيها اشفع لنا، يا أبا الحسن، يا علي بن الحسين، يا زين العابدين، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله يا وجيها يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله يا وجيها يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها اشفع لنا يا وجيها يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا جميعا يا وجيها اشفع لنا يا وجيها يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله يا وجيها يا وجيها يا أبا الحسن يا علي يا ابن محمد أيها الهادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا يا وجيها اشفع لنا يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند اشفع لنا يا وجيها اشفع لنا الله يا وصي الحسن والخلفاء الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها يا وجيها اطلبوا حوائجكم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بنا ما أنت أهله يا الله. يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد
this so I can see the brothers. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم اللهم افتح لنا باب رحمتك وانشر علينا من خزائن علومك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. My brothers and my sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If I can ask my brothers, if it's okay, if you guys can come as forward as much as you can over there. It helps me if you come forward. I feel like I'm talking to you more. Thank you. Shukran. So, we've come towards the latter days of Muharram, and we often ask that question: how is it that we can maintain a level of proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or what we like to call spirituality, after the fiery nights, after the month of mourning? Because it's normal that our spirituality fluctuates as time goes on. And what I wanted to talk about was how the halat, the states that we feel, are based on the way that we see the world, more so than it is about how we feel in a certain moment. So it's something that is within our control. It's not something that is just up in the air and then it comes and goes when we don't know what it is that we're feeling. So sometimes I feel really good and I think I feel close to Allah. Sometimes I don't feel so good, I think I feel far from Allah. Really, how do you know? How do you know if you're feeling far from God? If you're having a really bad day or a bad week, you caught up further away from God. What tells you it's further away from God? There's a measurement stick. So we can't just jump and say I feel far from Allah based on me not feeling like I feel close. The feeling is not as reliable as the thought, the worldview. Imam Hussain alayhi salam did what he did with Yazid for a certain reason. And yes, justice was a part of that. And yes, truth was a part of that. And yes, nahi al-munkar wal amr bil ma'ruf was a part of that. Standing up to the oppressor was a part of that. All of that is true. But ultimately, the number one reason why Abu Abdullah sacrificed everything that he sacrificed, and why we come every year and we commemorate every year, is because he did it for Islam. That's why. Yani there's an intention in which he emerged and he sacrificed everything for Islam. That might sound very basic to you right now, but I'm going to flesh it out and show you how that isn't basic at all. The number one principle in our religion is the intention, the niyyah. If you pray and you don't make your niyyah before your prayer, the prayer is batil. It's the first rukun. If you fast and you don't make your niyyah before fasting, the fasting is batil. It's the first rukun, principle. It's the first pillar. As in, if this is not part of your ibadah, there is no ibadah. Because ibadah must be preceded by the intention of coming close to Allah. Taqarruban ila Allah. What happens in Karbala isn't just a sad story. Here's the point. We're not crying for a sad story or for such a tragedy. It is a very great tragedy, and it's one of the worst things that's ever happened to anyone. But is that why we cry, or is it because who it happened to? And why it happened? Who it happened to and why is actually more important than what? It's the Imam Ma'soom appointed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the representative of the deen, of the mission of Rasulullah, of Islam, of why we're here, why we exist. It happens to this person, this symbol, the portal, the rope between heaven and earth. It happens to him because he's trying to open up the portal to heaven. So it's a rebellion against God. It's an absolute disaster. The worst thing that could ever happen because of who it happened to and why. He said, I emerged للإصلاح في أمة جدي. He wanted to reform the religion after it had been corrupted. It's been completely corrupted. No one recognizes what this is anymore. Islam. Islam. When we say Islam, Islam didn't start with Rasulullah. When we say Islam, what does Islam mean? One who submits is submission. And a Muslim, I submitted. I submit, I gave myself to God. Muslim, I completely gave myself to La ilaha illallah. That's what it means. So Adam was a Muslim, Nuh was a Muslim, Ibrahim was a Muslim, Isa was a Muslim, Musa was a Muslim, alayhum salam. They were all Muslims. They were Muslims. They all submitted and gave themselves to God. Islam is giving yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believing in monotheism, La ilaha illallah. And Muhammad Rasulullah, say, Muhammad. Muhammad Rasulullah is the gate that seals prophethood, cements the religion, and then the appointed successor of the message continues to guard that message and take us by the hand towards God. And then that person who's supposed to take us by the hand, he gets massacred by the very same people that are claiming to be Muslims after they just prayed and after they just said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu Muhammad Rasulullah. So it's not a thing that you say on your tongue. It's something that you have to live and see in the world before you. Notice, Imam al-Hussain, before he goes to Kufa, the people in Medina and Mecca tell him, don't go to Iraq. They're going to betray you when you go there. Don't go to Kufa. They're going to betray you. You know what he replies? أعلم أنهم قاتلي. I know that they are the ones that are going to kill me. ولكن لابد من العراق. However, there is no other avenue except to go to Iraq. What does he mean? I have to go to Iraq. Why? Kufa was the place that Imam Ali alayhi salam had worked on. Kufa was the place that the people loved Imam Ali the most. It was the center of Tashayyu', Kufa. However, the Tashayyu' was not complete. The people that were in the army on the day of Karbala, right at the back, they're from Kufa. They're the ones that sent the letters to Imam al-Hussein. He saw them and he told them, you sent me the letter. They would deny it. They stood at the back. They didn't want to fight. They would stand at the back and they would pray for Imam Hussein. Ya Allah, ansur Abu Abdullah. They were in the army, but they wouldn't do anything about it. And they had invited him, but they got scared because they were basically threatened. Their kids were threatened, their families were threatened. And so they felt like they were in between a rock and a hard place. They weren't willing to give their lives. Abu Abdullah knew that was going to happen. He went there for a reason. That place was the most fertile land for Tashayyu' to grow and be complete. There were no lovers in Medina, there were no lovers in Mecca. But Kufa had lovers, but they weren't that brave yet. Abu Abdullah knew his blood was going to be spilt, but it had to be spilt on fertile land. It had to be spilt in a place where it could be taken in and used to complete Tashayyu'. The Tashayyu' that we believe in right now is a Tashayyu' where, watch how they, as much as they kill us around the world over the centuries, as much as they come after us, everything that they do, we keep respawning. What's wrong with these people? They keep coming back. As much as you do to them, as much as you oppress them, as much as you try to ostracize them and kill them and threaten them, they keep coming stronger. Every generation, more of them and stronger. Because of Karbala and because of Mahdawiyah. We have hope. Ultimately, we always have hope. Things always get worse for everyone else. For us, we're just like, it's getting closer. We know that, it just means it's getting closer. We know the end, what happens. The only question is if I'm going to be part of the main characters for the end of the story. Am I going to be one of the main people? But we already know what happens. The Imam comes back and everything in the prophecy is fulfilled. But am I going to be with him? Or am I going to be at the back? Ya Allah, help him. Working against him. And Karbala, because we're willing to give everything up. Karbala makes you detached. Karbala makes you have complete tashayyu'. Imam al-Hussein knew this. He knew that only a few generations later, in the time of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, there were 900 ulama within Kufa. Each one of them was saying, حدثني جعفر ibn Muhammad. So they were now narrating of Ahlul Bayt in Kufa. It became the hub of the Sharia. Even till now, it's the hub of the Sharia. And that's where the Imam's going to return to. There's a reason why his blood was spilled on that land for that reason. But what does that mean? Why am I explaining this? I'm explaining this because he was looking towards a worldview, a aqidah. In Islam, we have something called aqidah and fiqh. Who knows the difference between aqidah and fiqh? You guys don't know the difference? Ahsant, okay, we should know the difference. Fiqh is halal or haram. Okay? It's what we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do. Wajib, muharram, makruh, mustahab. If this is okay, it's not okay. That's fiqh, laws. Who do we get our fiqh from? If I told you right now, how do you know how to pray? How do you know it's correct? How do you know your fasting is correct? How do you know anything you do? What do you base it on? When you guys call us at 3 a.m. and you ask us, is this, I fell on the floor and there was water there and what do I do? And is it najis? Is it not najis? You follow a marja, right? You do taqleed. I do taqleed, you do taqleed. Either you become an expert and you derive from what the Ahlul Bayt said and what Allah said in the Quran, or I follow an expert. It's normal, right? We all have a marja. Like anyone else, you're going to go for brain surgery. You want the best brain surgeon. It's just basic. Common sense. I want to know my religion. I go to the expert. No problem. Aqidah is different. Aqidah is your belief system. It's what you believe. As in, why am I here? What's the purpose of life? Who created me? How do I know He's real? Where did I come from? Where am I going? What's the afterlife like? That's aqidah. It means your beliefs. Why is it called aqidah? It comes from the word aqada. Aqada comes from the meaning of a knot in a rope because it's tight. Aqada. That's why we call a contract aqd or aqd nikah. When two people get married, we call it aqd. Aqd because it's a contract between them. It means it tied them. Okay? Aqada. It means a knot in a rope. We say that means belief system. Why? Because your beliefs should be like a knot in a rope in your heart. It should be knotted to your heart. That's how much you believe. It's part of who you are. It became you. It's called aqidah. Within aqidah, there's no marja. You can't have a marja in aqidah. There's no taqleed. You can't follow anyone. It's not allowed. You are your own marja when it comes to aqidah. It's wajib on you to answer all those questions I just mentioned right now. You need to be able to prove that God exists yourself without asking anyone else. You need to be able to do that. Now you can do that for yourself. You don't have to do that theologically or intellectually. It's always better if you can. You can do it in a different way through dua. You can do it, but you need to get to that point where you believe in God. For real, deep in your heart, not because your parents told you to. You need to believe in the Prophet, for real. That the Quran wasn't just something written by a man 1,400 years ago, and then if you go to Speaker's Corner, they can make you forget everything and doubt in your whole religion because they told you 5 minutes of different shubuhat. What kind of aqidah is that? That's not aqidah, that's fluff. That's not aqidah. Aqidah, you're working on yourself, you're reading, you have a worldview. So you're able to understand the world within a certain lens. You understand what happens in your life, and we say it makes sense. There's a reason behind this. It makes sense. What's Allah trying to tell me? This is a sign. What do we mean when we say these things? We're saying that this is based on the way that I see the world. Here's the problem. A lot of the time when we're growing up in London, then the people that we're growing up with in our workplace and at school, we become a lot more like them. And the only difference is the way that we look. So I have a nice beard, and I have these rings, and I wear hijab, and whatever else. I might move up and down 5 times a day. I don't eat pork. And that's the difference. Oh yeah, no whiskey too. No whiskey, no pork. That's the difference. That's what Imam Hussain died for. So you don't eat pork and you don't drink whiskey. Because if I ask you about the way you see the world, and the way that you live in life, and what you're doing and everything else, it's just like any Tom, Dick, and Harry. in how they see the world. And I'm not even saying like what you're doing at work. Sure, we might be all doing the same thing, but the intention behind everything, the intention you have when you wake up in the morning, and when you raise your kids, and when you marry, and when you come home to sleep, everyone does those things, but the intentions are different. Some people do those things for themselves. Some people do it with Allah. That's the difference. That's what a Muslim is. A Muslim still lives life. We still enjoy. We still go through whatever people go through. We have our pleasure and we have our pain. But we have pleasure and pain with God. That's the difference. That's a monotheist. If I don't have that in my life, what am I really doing? Then what am I really saying when I say I don't feel close to God? What is it about me and God that isn't close right now? Is it just the way I feel? Is that reliable? How often do you feel differently than you did before? Every week, every month we go through different phases. You look at the way that you wrote on Twitter or on Facebook a couple years ago to the way you are now. You're so different, you can't believe it's the same person. Likewise, your states change. You grow up, you change. You have different friends, different people. You're constantly growing. You can't rely on how you feel to measure that, to measure your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not based on how you feel. Sometimes God makes you feel really good, and that's a blessing, and we should take that when it comes. But sometimes you don't feel so good. Does that mean when I don't feel so good, I don't feel God in my life, that means He's not in my life? I have to rely on actual, reliable evidence and proof. And if I've done that with my aqeedah, I know God's there even in the dark times. Actually, the dark times are the times I have to understand it the most. And this is the point of why I wanted to speak about what I wanted to speak about today. Today was supposed to be a discussion circle. I wasn't supposed to give a lecture today. Today was supposed to be 20 guys. We're going to sit down, we're going to talk. But they told me a lot of people came, alhamdulillah. Love to see you all. They said, can you give a lecture? I said, sure. He said, what about? I said, I'm just going to speak from my heart. And this is what came out right now. And there's a reason why I'm saying all of this. Everyone, guys, every single person in this world is going to leave you. Everyone. That's why you really need to get with La ilaha illallah before it's too late. Everyone is going to leave you. Everyone. Everyone you love. Do you know that by the time you're 16 years old, you would have spent 80% of the time you would ever have spent with your parents? By the time you're 16. Some of us here are 16. You guys already spent 80%. There's 20% left. You're about to start that. But now you're busy. You've got A-levels, you've got uni, you've got work, you want to get married, you're going to have kids. You're not going to see your parents often. You might see them once a week. You might see them a few minutes a day, right? Because you're so busy. It's normal. We grow up, we get busy. But once upon a time, our parents were the people we saw the most. Every single day we come home from school, mom and dad, she made food, we're sitting with dad, I watched a match. I'm close with my parents, my siblings. They were the main characters in my life. If my parents were the main characters in my life, then one day they're not. One day you leave. Everyone goes through this. And then you have new characters. You find someone that you fall in love with, and you get married, and then you have kids, and then your time is spent with them, and then they grow up and they leave you. Constantly, that's just a circle of life. That's what happens. Like Sayyid Hassan at the back. Hassan, we lived together for several years. Every moment we ate together, we prayed together, and then what happened? How often do we see each other now, man? Once a year. We were together every single day. I couldn't imagine my life without Hassan. And now, we don't see each other. Just, I got married, you got married, move on. Life. It's just life. Sometimes I tell my wife, I wonder what's going to happen the day when me and you are not in each other's lives anymore. One day, you're going to die, or I'm going to die. And hopefully that's the way that we split up. Hopefully not before that. Something's going to happen one day. We're going to split. Either you're going to die or I'm going to die. The other person's left over. That's just how it is. But you know, the only one that doesn't leave, the only one, not only doesn't leave, let me say it better. The only one that doesn't change is Allah. the only constant, the only permanent being. Ya Allah, Anta al-Baqi, wa ana, wa kullu shay fani. You're the only one that stays, and all of us were perishing. And I'm perishing. And I just keep changing. I'm not constant. I keep changing. I keep finding out new things about myself. But Allah is the same. But you'll always find something new and different, because He's never ending and He's unlimited. But Allah is the only constant. He's the only permanent, the only real al-haq, the only objective truth. So if I'm going to invest in something, if I'm going to invest in a relationship, shouldn't it be this one? What does it mean to invest in that relationship? La ilaha illallah. That I give myself to Allah completely, I become Muslim. Not Muslim by fiqhi standards. We're all Muslim by fiqhi standards. You want to get married? You want to get married to a Christian man? You make him say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu Muhammad Rasulullah, and it becomes okay to marry him. Oh, she's Muslim now, she said the shahada. Yeah, fiqhiyan, yeah. Has it become a aqd though in her heart? No. Fiqhiyan, you can say this person's Muslim. As long as they say shahada, they're Muslim. That's the fiqhi standard. But the aqidah standard is not that. You must actually believe in ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. And that means you live with God. And when you live with God, it's different than understanding words coming from here, from the minbar. It's different than reading about Him, about Islam. Let me give you the example. Right now, the knowledge that we're all receiving, we're all exchanging ideas, and we receive it from the outside. These are just triggers. This knowledge is just a trigger. I'm just triggering something in you right now. I'm triggering some ideas in you. You gain that knowledge, you understand it, you form it, you reform it, you try to digest it. That's the way we receive knowledge externally. But there's a difference between that kind of knowledge and knowledge that you have of your own self. For example, when you're hungry, how do you know you're hungry? How do you have knowledge of your hunger? You don't think about that. You just know that you're hungry, right? You just say, oh, I'm hungry. But before you said that you were hungry, you knew it. You came to know about your hunger. That's why you went to eat. That knowledge of your hunger is different than the knowledge that you're gaining from me right now. Because you're gaining this knowledge from the outside. But you gain knowledge of your hunger from yourself. You can tell me you're hungry, and then now I understand that you're hungry. I understand it because it came to me from the outside. But do I feel your hunger? I don't feel your hunger. I just know that you're hungry. But you have a different level of knowledge of your own hunger. You feel the hunger. You feel pain in your knee. You go to the doctor, you say, I've got this pain in my knee, I'm trying to explain it properly, I can't move to this side, to that side. He diagnoses you, and he says, this is what's wrong with you. He understands it because he studied it. So he gives you the recommendations that the doctor gives you, but does he feel the actual pain in your knee? You're the only one that feels that pain in your knee. He understands it. He diagnosed it. He doesn't feel that pain. This is the difference in the level of knowledge that we're trying to acquire. Imagine you had level of knowledge of Allah in the way that you know about your hunger. Think about that for just a minute. Think of the way you know about when you're sad. When you know you're sad, or when you know you're happy, or when you know you're hungry, or when you know you're in pain, that knowledge of your pain and your sadness, the way that you know about it, so you respond to it, what if that was knowledge of God? You feel God close to you through knowledge, not based on some feelings, but based on knowledge. I know God's with me the way I know I'm hungry. I know God exists the way that I know that I'm hungry. You can't make me doubt in my own hunger. I'm hungry, bro. As much as you try to make me doubt about it, nah, I'm still hungry. You can't make someone doubt in Allah's existence when they feel Allah when they know Allah is there with them, huwa ma'akum aynama kuntum, He's with you wherever you are. You can't make someone doubt anymore, because now, yes, He's closer to me than my jugular vein. He is always. Just that I am not close to myself, so I can't recognize it. Because I constantly think about things on the outside, externally, when it was always inside me. These are, what I'm talking about right now, these are all philosophical concepts, by the way, that I'm just trying to talk about in a normal conversation. These are all philosophical concepts. Knowledge is split into different parts. These are all different types of knowledge. The knowledge that I'm talking about is called knowledge by presence. Knowledge by presence. Ilm huduri. When you feel Allah with you, not based on feeling, based on knowledge by presence. The way that you know that you are you. When you wake up in the morning, you don't need anyone to remind you of who you are. It's you. You wake up, you go, you brush your teeth, you wash your face. You don't need to recount who you are. It's that level of knowledge. That's the highest level that we want to get to. We're using all the external methods right now to get to that. These are just triggers, reminders. This lecture is a reminder. And the best way to do that, to use all the different faculties that you have, to use your intellect, to use your imagination, and to use your senses. We're using our senses right now to listen. We need to use our intellect to reflect, tafakkur, tadabbur, and our imagination to try to relate and empathize and put ourselves in those situations. Like, for example, look at our ages right now. These are small little imaginary questions that we can ask ourselves to start to get us to go onto a higher plane. For example, I was with the school the other day in Sydney, and I went to the school and I sat with them. It was the day before the 10th, and I want to speak to these kids about Ashura. And the best way to do it is to start to use their imagination to get them on the plane. They're all around 12, 13 years old, boys and girls. So I said, guys, if you were in Karbala, who would you be? And they said, Qasim and Sukaina. And I said, yeah, now imagine that you're Qasim, and imagine you're Sukaina. And think about that. And then she would imagine her father about to leave her, and he would imagine that there's no one left and he has to go and defend and go on the battlefield and say goodbye to his mom and their kids. And then I spoke to my friend, he's around 27, 28, and I'm 33. And I said, Yo Ali al-Akbar, and I'm Abu Fadl Abbas. And my teacher's around 60, he's Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And then we put ourselves in that situation, and it became so real. We just used our imagination though. Why? Because then you start to feel the burden of that character in Karbala as if you were the one now. So I felt like, all right, what if everyone was thirsty and I was the only one that could get the water and there's no one left, and I made a promise, and then you start to feel like in your heart a big burden on your chest, on your shoulders. Likewise, everyone in their own position. Start with imagination, take yourself to a higher plane, then intellect. Your intellect, which differentiates between truth and falsehood and starts to set a foundation of knowledge. Like, for example, with the intellect in which we come towards the traditions of Ahlul Bayt after we believe in them. And when we come to understand that life is always going to throw these curveballs at you, and it's better that you do life. Life is something you do. If you do life with Allah by your side, when you look at the narration, Inna habballah abdan ibtalah. When Allah loves His servant, He gives him a trial. He gives him a trial if He loves him. I remember my cousin once asked me, she said, is this true? If Allah loves someone, He gives them a trial? I said, yep. So the closer I get to Allah, I'm going to go through some tough times? I said, yep. She said, I don't want to get too close. I said, that's okay. That's your level. It's okay. Not everyone wants to get too close because they're scared. But life is going to come at you anyway. Like I said, everyone's going to leave you. So why not get with the La ilaha illallah program right now while you still can in your heart? Because it's not enough to say it on your tongue. Those guys in the army in Karbala said it on their tongues. So you have to have it in your heart. That means you have to work on it. And so when you see the hardships of life coming at you, imagination can really help you, because when the real tragedies occur in your life, you're going to have to channel all of that which you call spirituality to make the right decision in that moment. when the real tragedies occur, then you have to make a choice. And you channel it. The beginning of that is imagination, the end of that is intellect. Last year in Muharram, I was in Toronto, and a good brother of mine that I know there, amazing guy, beautiful man. He's been married for a while, and him and his wife couldn't have a child for the longest time. And on one of the nights, he invited me to his home, and we sat down in the basement, and he said, I have news for you. And I said, what is it? And he said, my wife's 5 months pregnant. And he was so happy, he had tears in his eyes, and I became teary because I know what it meant to him. And we hugged for a long time, and we were so happy because he had been really waiting and asking Allah for this. And only a few days later, it was on the 10th, his wife had the miscarriage. And I remember we spoke, and I cried, and he didn't cry. Until we brought up Ali al-Asghar, he cried. He channeled it. He was able to channel it for real life, for his daily life, for a tragedy that he's living, and he was able to be patient with that because he had the aqd through his belief and his heart. Do you see? That's the real spirituality. Because life's going to come at you and you have to make a choice. That's what I mean by choice. The choice you make is when you say, why me? Or you say, Allahumma taqabbal minna hada al-qurban. You say, khudh hatta tarda. Take. You say, Ya Allah, are you satisfied? Or you say, why me? I'm a good person. Why do bad things always happen to good people? I'm done with this. It doesn't work. And all the other things that we say. Life comes at all of us. It comes at all of us. And it's a lot easier to speak about right now than when it actually happens. Because when it happens, you're in the dark. And it's very hard to listen to anything. It's very hard to listen to reason when you're in the dark. It's very hard to see. I'm going to share one more tragedy. The tragedies are real. And this was my first year of marriage. We had just gotten married and we were in Lebanon. And one night I was home, I got a call. It was my wife's number. I picked up and then it was a man on the phone. And he said, is this Hussein? And I said, yes, who's this? He said, your wife's been in a car accident. I said, where? He told me, so I ran out. It was raining, it was nighttime. I'm running. I ran for 15 minutes. And then I saw a bunch of people gathered around and I'm in denial. I'm like, that's not me. I'm looking somewhere else because that can't be my car. And I saw my car, it was completely sandwiched, totaled. And I'm still in denial, I can't believe it. Until I come forward and all these people and the ambulance is there and I saw my wife laid on the ground, blood everywhere. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I sat next to her and trying to speak to her, she's not responding to me. And I'm in a different zone right now. I'm thinking of her mother, her parents, what am I going to do, what's happening? And I really thought I was going to lose her. We put her in the ambulance. I'm sitting down, I remember the whole ambulance ride, I kept thinking of Sayyidah Zainab, alayhi salam, how she did this again and again and again and again on the same day. Except for her, they were mutilated and it was a war and it kept happening and she kept saying to Allah, accept from me. And then after that, she was able to gather the children, chains, whipped to Kufa, to Sham, still telling Yazid, you will never erase our memory. Man, that's real aqeedah, real belief system. There's no time to think Allah is different, Allah is far from me, close to me. There's no time for that. I have to just stay with Allah the whole time. I'm living with Him like I'm living with all my other states, like my hunger and my pain and my fear. And I had to make a decision. Ya Allah, why'd you do this? Or, Ya Allah, as Imam Hussain said, when Ali al-Asghar was in his arms, Ya Allah, I can only go through this because you're watching me. You're with me. You can see me. I'm living with you. You're here with me. So you have to live with God. Islam is to live with Allah. Labayka ya Hussein for Islam. Yani Labayka ya Hussein means La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. To give yourself to God, to channel all the different pain that you feel through the tragedies of life to God, to feel Him with you wherever you are. Nabi Ayyub, when he went through, all that he went through was exiled and he was sick and he lost his children and he had everything and he lost everything. You know what he says to Allah? I love this ayah in the Quran. He says, Ilahi massani dur. Lord, hardship and trial has befallen me. Then he says, wa anta arhamur rahimin. He doesn't say, take it away. He says, trial has befallen me and you are the most merciful. What does that tell you? I trust you. And I trust you, Ya Allah. I'm going through this. You see me? I trust you. That's it. When Yunus was in the whale, فَظَنَّ أَنْ لَن نَقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ. He said, well, he's inside the whale in the middle of the sea. Look, a real whale ate this man in the middle of the sea. He has nowhere to go. And Allah says he believed that we won't leave him inside the whale. Yunus wouldn't disbelieve that we won't let him go, we won't leave him to himself. And لن نقدر عليه فنادى في الظلمات أن لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. So he called out in the darknesses, the darkness of the whale, the darkness of the sea, the darkness of the sky. It's just complete black darkness. He called out, لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك. There is no Lord but you. I am one of those who have oppressed myself. Where do we recite that all the time? That because he recited it in deep desperation. He's in the middle of the whale and then he recites لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك. Where do we say that every year? Laylatul Qadr. سبحانك يا لا إله إلا أنت الغوث الغوث. That's where it comes from. In Duaa Jawshan, we use what we call dhikr Yunus. It's the dhikr of Prophet Yunus. Dhikr of the whale, because it's dhikr of desperation, calling on to Allah when you have nothing left. It's just flipped around. And la ilaha illa anta subhanak inni kuntu min al-dhalimin. And here's the answer. فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ. Allah says, so we answered him. فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ وَنَجَّيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْغَمِّ وَكَذَلِكَ نُنْجِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And we saved him from the darkness. And that's how we save the believers. We save the believers. Those who believe, we always come back. We always save them. يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم. My servants who have transgressed against their own selves. على أنفسهم, not على Allah. You messed up, but you messed up with your own self. You only ruined it for yourself. Allah doesn't gain and lose. You messed up for your own self. Allah doesn't want you to mess up for your own self. And He doesn't say, Ya ayyuhal mu'minun, or Ya ayyuhal muslimun, or Ya ayyuhal nas. He says, Ya ibadi. So He's using a comforting tone here when He's calling us. He said, my servant, my devotee. If you messed up against your own self, Ya ibadi alladhina asrafu ala anfusihim, la taqnatu min rahmatillah. Don't despair of the mercy of God. Don't give up. Don't let go, as hard as it gets. Don't ever say, I won't be with you. Don't ever say, I left you. I don't leave you. I never leave you. If you don't feel me, there's something that's blocking you. You are taking this bottle to the ocean and you get this much water. Get a new bottle, man. This is a very small bottle. And I'm quite thirsty. Why do you bring me this bottle? لا ما جيب لي واحد جديد. You have to take a larger container to the ocean. Look at that dua that Nabi Musa alayhi salam recites. He says, عملتها. Thank you. Sallallahu Muhammad wa Muhammad. Nabi Musa alayhi salam, he says, Rabbi zidni ilma. He doesn't say, Rabbi zid ilmi. What's the difference? Rabbi zidni ilma. He didn't say, Lord, increase my knowledge. He didn't say, Rabbi zid ilmi. He didn't say, increase my knowledge. He said, increase me in knowledge. Rabbi Zidni ilma. Increase me. I expand when you give me knowledge. Do you understand the difference? You grow. You yourself, when knowledge is poured into you, you grow. You become. You as a person. Nabi Musa is asking for himself to be expanded through knowledge. He's expanding. Knowledge expands you. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, كُلُّ وِعَاءٍ يَضِيقُ بِمَا جُعِلَ فِيهِ إِلَّا الْعِلْمِ إِنَّهُ يَتَّسِعُ. He said, every container becomes full with whatever you fill it up with. Once it reaches the limit, it's full. Except the container of knowledge, it expands. It keeps growing. You and I are containers of knowledge. We expand. Rabbi zidni ilma. Look at the way the Prophet spoke to Allah. Look at the way Allah spoke to us. Constantly giving us hope. Constantly giving us a way. Constantly giving us a rope. And then we say things like, I feel far from God. But I don't even know what I'm talking about when I say I feel far from God. It means there's something different. I've got a small bottle right now. I need to get a bigger bottle because Allah's giving me non-stop. He's abundant. I'm just not accepting. So let me accept. Allah is not going to hold back from me. Why would Allah hold back? He's all generous and He has everything and nothing to lose. Why would He ever hold back? Allah doesn't hold back. Allah says, لا تقنطوا. Don't despair of the mercy of Allah. So if I'm not receiving, I need to ask myself why. What am I doing that's not allowing myself to receive? Am I my own God? Who's Allah in my life? Who's the Allah that I'm worshipping and devoting myself to? Is it Allah, Rabbil Alameen, or is it some different idols in my heart? La ilaha illallah, what are my attachments? Am I addicted to a certain sin? Is that my Lord? Am I devoted to someone? That's against Allah. What is it in my life that I know I should be doing better that I'm not doing? What is it in my life that I know I shouldn't be doing that I keep doing? Let me remove those. Let me gain those. That's all it is. It's aqidah. It's not your feeling. Sometimes it feels good. Sometimes it doesn't feel good. It doesn't matter. That's irrelevant when it comes to what you believe. When it comes to what you believe, you do the right thing. When you're anxious, when you're tired, when you're happy, when you're whatever it is, you're disciplined with your belief. It's not based on how you feel. And if it comes to any point in feeling, at the very least, we never feel despair. No despair from the mercy of Allah. I want to take some time to talk to you guys. I don't want to talk at you the whole time. So inshallah, we'll open the opportunity for us to have a little conversation. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.
Does anyone have any questions about the lecture? Would anyone like to start off? Come on, don't be shy. It can be about anything. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. In the West, knowledge tends to be quite positivist, quite centered around your senses and testament to your senses, and it's a little bit more difficult to open yourself up to intellect and imagination, more so than in other parts of the world, especially in school, with you getting taught that it has to be seen or believed, tested to the senses for you to understand it and know about it. So what do you advise on opening yourself up basically to more than just your senses and opening yourself up to your intellect and your imagination?
So this is a really good question. I'm going to try not to bore you guys because I can go really far with this. This is what we call epistemology. Epistemology. And this is based on how do you know anything, or what value is there to any knowledge. So the knowledge that the brother is speaking about, where something has to be seen and observed and experimented on. It's a scientific method, which they call empirical, which is right now the main form of knowledge that everyone relies upon and values. And it's something that slowly we incorporate into our own life too. So we see something in the Quran, or we see something from Ahlul Bayt, or we see whatever it is, and then we don't believe it as much as when we see a scientific experiment or scientific evidence like, oh, it has now been discovered that these clouds are shown whatsoever. And then it brings you an ayah from the Quran. Allah knew this 1,400 years ago, the Prophet Muhammad. How could a man in the desert know that, you know? And you feel so happy and you share it everywhere. Especially your mom shares it all over WhatsApp, right? And then, right? And it might not even be a correct experiment. But because it's scientific and that's what the day and age values, we find it that's more valuable. Whereas science is very valuable in its own field. However, it should never enter fields that it has no business entering into, like fields of imagination, like dreams. There's only so much empirical data you can gather on dreams. You can, let's say, with psychology to an extent, and Carl Jung has done that, but not everyone accepts his work. There's a lot that I can bring up right now that empirical data cannot help you in. Like, for example, you know that feeling we all get when you think of someone and then they call you? And you're like, oh, I was just thinking of you. Okay, that happens. Look, the reason that I'm bringing it up is because we all feel it. Everyone's nodding their heads. So is that a coincidence? So what is that? How come we all feel that? And how come people all over the world relate to that? Based on empirical data, there has to be some sort of connection because there's enough people that it's happening to. So are we saying there's something called telepathy? Is that real? Can science go into that field? It can't. If you're interested in this topic, I would recommend a book called The Science Delusion by Rupert Sheldrake, where he debunks science and says that science has become its own religion. So science has become what it claims to be against because it has a set of principles that are not actually scientific now. Because if you say science is the basis of all knowledge, prove that scientifically. You can't even do that. So it's the law of non-contradiction. You can't even prove that scientifically that science is the point of all knowledge. Anyway, that's going into scientism. That's a different discussion. I don't want to digress too far. What I'm trying to prove right now is empirical data is not the be-all and end-all. There are other forms of knowledge for us to use, for us to gain knowledge through, like, for example, intellectual type of knowledge. And for that, mathematics is the first thing that anyone would suggest. Maths is a whole different world. There's no your truth and my truth when it comes to 2 + 2 = 4. There's just truth. There's no I respect you and pronouns and all that. It's just 4. If you say, I feel like it's 5 and I'm offended if you say 4, I don't care, it's 4. It's maths. That's intellectual. So mathematics actually, a lot of philosophers, they would have mathematics as a prerequisite for philosophy because that's the way you calculate within intellectual knowledge. It's principles, you use principles. Logic is a whole field on its own. And the way that you begin here is actually how you know anything. There's something that we call axioms. Axioms are things that you can't deny, but that can't even be proven because they're self-evident. When something is self-evident, it doesn't have a proof. It's an axiom. It's something that we start from. So, for example, in Arabic, we call it al-Ma'arif, the mother of all knowledge. Because if you don't have this, you can't know anything. And the mother of all knowledge is the law of non-contradiction, tanaqud in Arabic. The law of non-contradiction is this. This box can't be here. It's one of them. One of them has to be true. Based on this, which we all know is true, this is a law, we start to add new knowledge. It starts from here though. I can't prove that that's the case. It's just self-evident. You guys know that. Or for example, the whole is always greater than the part. That's another axiom that all knowledge comes from. Any sound-minded individual has to accept that the whole is greater than the part. If you say the part is greater than the whole, I can't prove you wrong. It's just something, you're crazy basically, you know? Or, oh, we're all living in a dream right now. Those kinds of people that come and they say, I'm living in a dream. Like one guy once told me, I was having a debate with him, and he said, we don't know anything is true. We might all just be in a dream, and you don't even know what you're saying is real, and I don't know what I'm saying is real, and we're not even sure about anything. And then I said, are you sure about that? And he said, no. I'm like, brother, I can't talk to you, because you're not even sure about what you're saying. Do you see what I'm trying to say? So there's no meaning to what he's saying. All these like funky philosophies that they come up with, it's all nonsense. It's all ridiculous. This is all debunked with axioms, just base principles. These need to be studied, as you can see, right? It's not some easy like way I can just talk about it, but actually it's common sense. We all use this every single day of our lives. We just don't know what they're called. Cause and effect. I know that this book didn't just create itself. I know there was someone who compiled it. I just know that because it can't just appear out of nowhere. You don't just get an iPhone on its own. Someone designed that. So cause and effect. These are laws and principles. So this is how you exercise your intellect. You study logic, mathematics and logic for intellect. Meditation helps a lot with imagination to get it under control. Through breath work and all sorts of meditation, to be able to practice focus and being present in the moment allows you to understand more about your imagination, your dreams, your visions. All comes back to a practice. It's all within practice. But if we're not doing that, we're not living there, we're constantly living in the sensual world, then yeah, that's going to be very difficult for us. And that's what most people are living in, the sensual world. And people don't meditate, they don't do maths, they don't study logic, and we watch a lot of TV, and we don't read. Notice how when you read Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, it's different than watching Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. When you watch Harry Potter, the story is told for you. It's all visual. When you read it, you have your own concept of Harry and Hagrid and Hermione. But when you watch it, it's done for you. So your imagination becomes lazy. But when you don't do that, that's why these films never make it to the level of the book. The book is always superior because you are the creator, your imagination. So it's important to allow your imagination to be nourished through fantasy sometimes. But if you're not reading, then it's not going to happen.
There's a bigger bowl for you.
Thank you.
There's more. You like another small. Yeah. Sisters, does anyone from the sisters have a question?
So it says, some of us, including yourself, are traveling to Iraq for Arba'een. What sort of prep do you think we should do? When we are there and doing the walk, what should our motivation be and what should we remember?
So, inshallah, may Allah accept your ziyarah on this amazing journey. And yes, inshallah, I'm going. I can't wait to go. I haven't been since, on Arba'een anyway, since 2017. So it's been a while. But Arba'een is different to the other ziyarat. I've been to ziyarah after the last Arba'een, and you get to spend time in the shrine, different, intimate time. But Arba'een, because of the walk, because of the significance of going back on that day in a way that you're pledging allegiance after what happened in Karbala, taking the footsteps of the survivors of Karbala, and you're taking that walk, there's a lot of time to reflect, and it's painful time. Time when you're walking, you're not very comfortable, and you're in pain, but the whole time, if you do it right, you build brotherhood, sisterhood, you might get married. It happens a lot. Every Arba'een trip we get people married, alhamdulillah. It's the reflection. the reflection through the pain, really. Because you're going to want to give up a lot. You're going to see all those taxis moving by, no one sees you, jump in the taxi, you're getting Karbala. But if you keep pushing through and you reflect on the last year, you reflect on the last 10 years, you reflect on your whole life, you're not going to get that intimate time in the shrine, don't expect that. But you're going to have intimate time with the Imam during the whole walk. And that moment, when you see the shrine, that first moment after you had been walking for so long and you had been waiting the whole year or however long you were waiting to come to Karbala, to that land, everything comes full circle. I would say, take all your troubles, take everything that you've been going through, take all your hopes and dreams and your pain and put that in a little basket and put that on your back and walk with that the whole way to Karbala. And I promise you, with a sincere intention, once you get there, the basket is going to be empty of all that pain. The basket, you're going to have formed a bond, let's say, a bond that wasn't there before with the Ma'soom, with the gate to God. That's what you're going to do. You're going towards the gate to God. That's how you should see it. So you're forming a bond with the gate. So when you get there, you can finally knock on the door, say you're an orphan. They never turn away the orphans. They always open a door for the aitam. So you're going there, but you're going there as someone who is devoted. You're not going there in a 5-star ride. You're going there as a devotee, as a faqir, as a yatim, and you ask them to take you in. They'll take you in.
Assalamu alaikum. So my question is that, so as we all know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's as you said, he's a constant. He doesn't like change, and so the question I have is that his will. So you see in Laylatul Qadr when we say that he can like our a'mal can like change, Allah can change our destiny, and like for example when we die, so he's changing basically like what's written, which is his will. But if Allah is not changing, how does his will, like how does it, yeah, you understand what I mean? No.
This is Aqidah, by the way. This is why we should study this. Yeah. So, it's a really good question. And here's the amazing point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first of all, I want to clarify something. Allah doesn't change in the way that we change. But Allah is never a set thing either. We can't fathom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay? So let's not even try. But what we want to say, He's always going to be Rahman. He's always going to be Rahim. That's what we mean. He doesn't change, yani. He's always going to be who He is. Now, if Allah willed us, will in Arabic is irada. So irada ilahiyya is what we're talking about. The divine will. Allah creates with divine will. Irada ilahiyya. The question is actually a very deep question. Because what we're saying is, if Allah is one and never changes, and He willed us into existence, how come He willed a second time and it overrid His first will? Isn't that a contradiction? That's true, it would be a contradiction. Actually, it would be a contradiction for Allah to have two wills anyway. Forget what they were, even if they were the same. Even if they were the same thing, how can He have two wills, or three wills, or four wills? Because He's one. Allah is one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually has one will, one irada. It's infinite, it's never ending, and it has only ever been one. Only one will has ever been, and that's what created everything and continues to do whatever it does. What that means, my brother, is this, and this is what's so amazing, and this is the idea of soulmates in Islam as well. When Allah created Iblis It was the same time Allah created dunya. It was the same time Allah created the angels. It was the same time Allah created the mountains. It was the same time Allah created everything that ever was. And it came out in chronological order. But there was one will for everything. And that means the will that created Rasulullah is the same will that created you and I. The same will that created your parents. And so your parents were always supposed to meet each other because you were always willed to be. So they were always supposed to meet. Likewise, I was always supposed to meet my wife because my daughter was always meant to be. You were always, all of us here were always meant to become. We were always meant, the same will that created the stars created you and I in this time. So we were willed to live together in a generation. How beautiful is that? We were all meant to be at this time. And we can't ask, why wasn't I with the Prophet Muhammad? Because we weren't willed to be in that time. I was supposed to be the son of 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 the guy that lived that time, my ancestor, whoever it was. I couldn't be me without him. That's like saying, why couldn't there be 7 without 6? Or 5? 5 and 6 just come before 7. Numbers. You know, you can't get to 10 before all the others. So, this idea about the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being one, then gives us another question. But what happens when I pray? What happens when I ask? What happens when we say, Allah changed my destiny? Actually, what happens here is something we call bada'. That's the word that we're asking about. And there are chapters written about this in Aqidah. But ultimately, bro, I'm never going to go there. What I'm going to say is this. Allah already knew it was going to change. And He already knew you were going to make the dua. And He knew you were going to pay sadaqah. And He knew that you were going to escape the car crash. And He, basically, yes, everything that you did affected your destiny, but Allah knew your destiny. That does not mean that you don't have anything to say though, because right now I know that I'm doing this. And no one's forcing me. I know no one's forced me to do it. God didn't just force me to do this, because then someone can say, oh, then how come I go to heaven or hell or whatever else? I'm not responsible for my sins if Allah designed me to commit them. I'm not saying Allah is making you commit your sins. I'm responsible for my action, but Allah already knew I was going to do this one day. From the beginning of time, when Allah created the angels, He knew I was going to do this on a silly moment. He knows everything. It didn't come to Him later on. He knew it all. He's always known it. He's always known it. He's always known everything, and everything was always willed. It's only one will. That doesn't mean you shouldn't pray, because there's a metaphysical effect. It's the same way that, let me give you an example. You go to the gym, you got hench. Allah knew you were going to do that. Does that mean you shouldn't go to the gym and not get hench anymore? Oh, but He already knew I was going to do it, so I'm not going to go to the gym. Man, you can only get hench if you go to the gym, but Allah knew that was going to happen. So, if you want something that's physical, right? There's a metaphysical cause and effect too. When I make dua, I receive something. Just because Allah knew it was going to happen, should I not do it? But then I don't get the result. Do you see? So I still have to make the dua. I still have to pay the charity for the narrative to go the way it's always meant to be. And if you don't, Allah already knew you weren't going to do it. Allah has knowledge of all things. Here's the 2 principles, because it gets very confusing. Allah has knowledge of all things, and I'm not forced to do anything. Just stick to those 2 principles, because that's where it takes you. I'm responsible for my own actions, and Allah doesn't force me to do anything. I'm responsible, but Allah already knew everything and all the alternate timelines and all the different times that I gave charity and made dua, and that was all known too. But I still have something to say about it. Yeah, it's about this. Yeah, go on. Yeah, go on.
That's working. I'm supposed to be.
So just something I'm struggling with. Bismillah and Assalamu alaikum. Something I'm struggling with. Allah has wills for everybody, yes? Does Allah have a will for everybody? One will. But Allah is like Rahman, Wadud, loving, merciful. Attributes, or? So, for example, Yazid is going to hell and Rasulullah is going to heaven. He already knows that from beforehand. So is that just, or? But he knows that beforehand. That's the. Yeah.
Yeah, He has unlimited knowledge. I'm saying. And you just explained it through Hussein or Yazid. It doesn't change anything. If someone going to heaven or hell is responsible for his actions, there's no jabr. That's what it's called. No one is forced into any sort of haram. Yazid actually asked, by the way, he asked Imam Sajjad, is there a way that I can get forgiveness for this? Imam Sajjad said, yes, I'll tell you, but you're not going to do it, I already know. So forget about Allah knowing. Imam Sajjad knew that he wouldn't do it because he's just not that kind of person. But Yazid was a nutcase. He destroyed the Kaaba. This guy was cooked. It's not even, that's get a better example than Yazid. Yeah, sisters. Let me get sisters.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so this is a little paragraph. Sometimes we go through difficult times in our life and it's hard and we are patient and in the end things get better. But certain things are really hard to maintain hope for. It's not a bad thing that passes. For example, as a girl waiting for Allah to send her nasleeb can feel so painful. I see myself growing older and the girls around me too, and God has not sent us the right person. Are we meant to maintain endless hope? But what if our prayers never get answered?
First of all, the prayer is always answered. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer in different ways. The prayer being answered doesn't always mean that it will be the result that we want. I remember me praying to get married when I was like 20. And I was praying my heart out to get married. And it didn't work out. And I'm so glad it didn't work out now. But at the time I was so upset. And I thought that, my prayer wasn't answered. My prayer was answered. It was really good that it was answered in that way. Alhamdulillah. There's a reason why these things happen. So it's not always be all end all the way that we think what's best for us. Allah knows what's best for us. Saying that, right now, it's hard when it comes to marriage especially. Because this generation, this is about the society though. It's not about us as people. I see the best boys and girls all over the world. And I really think it's gotten to a level of a crisis. It's an actual crisis now of us not getting married. And with the men, it's a lot easier because they have more time. So they can be 20 or 30 years old, 40 years old, they can still get married. For a sister, it's a lot more limited than that. It doesn't have as much time as men. Because of that, it feels like we're going towards a place where in about 10 years' time, a lot of sisters in our community are not going to be married. That's the way it's looking in Canada. That's the way it's looking in America. That's the way it's looking in the UK. That's the way it's looking in Australia. I can see it more so in Australia because they're an older community than us, so I can see the future in them. It's mad over there. Mad. Yeah, not only is it so many unmarried, so many single mothers as well, more than anywhere else. So the way society is built now, it's not built in a way that it's very easy to get married. And once we do get married, it's not very easy to sustain that marriage. There's no reason to. Like before, there was a reason to take each other's, I don't want to say the bad word, but to, put up with each other. There was a reason to put up with each other because we relied on each other more to live. But right now, men don't need women, women don't need men like they used to. Just based on society, I'm saying. Women used to need men in civilizations past because of security and financial reasons. They don't need that anymore. They, a lot of time, make more money than the man, and the government can keep them secure. For a man, it was mainly for purposes of mating and pleasure, and that's why he'd have several women and even concubines. And now, The internet has taken men's souls, and AI and VR goggles and whatever you want makes you look like you got a girlfriend that you created and she has a voice. And just like that movie Her, it's a real thing now. You can make your own girl. And you can put headache level. And so you're like, you know what? I'm getting what I need. And I don't need anyone to tell me what to do. Likewise, the girl is saying, oh, I don't need this guy telling me what to do and whatever, and I'm safe and I've got money. So why should we get married except if we fear Allah? If we're really God-conscious people and we believe in family values and bettering ourselves as people and not just being with people temporarily, but actually building a family unit and bringing children into the world that I want to raise on the path of Ahlul Bayt, that's a sacrifice now. That used to be a basic normal life standard. It's not a life standard anymore. You really have to be a focused person now to want to get married and stay married. Because a lot of people that get married, they tell you, yo, marriage is the worst thing ever. So not only is it about getting married, it's getting married to the right person. And that's getting harder and harder. It's not because of who you are, though. That's the problem here that I really want to highlight. This doesn't define who you are, getting married and not getting married. The most amazing people that I know right now are not married, especially when it comes to sisters. I know so many gems that are not married. And for them to define themselves based on that is not accurate. But the world that we're in right now, unfortunately, we're in a time where we're getting tested with all sorts of tribulations that haven't been around before. You know, right now people don't even know what they are. If they're a man, woman, or lizard, they are what they say they are, right? So, subhanAllah, that's the test of the age. That's the test of the age right now. And there are so many options as well. So many of us have commitment issues. We might come across the best person and we don't feel like that's the person for us because we are thinking of some other ideal person. The internet makes us compare whoever it is that we're talking to all these celebrities and attractive people. So we have to be realistic and we have to understand what we want from life, what we want in a spouse, and be proactive about that. So what I would say is when we say nasib, I'm waiting for my nasib. Waiting for my nasib doesn't mean I'm waiting for it. Just heck, some guy's going to come to me and knock on my door. Okay? There's ways to do this. And I'm going to say a few things here, and I don't want to push any buttons or poke the bear, but I really think you should be proactive about trying to get married. And it's easier for the man, for sure it's easier for the man, but it's not wrong for the sister to also approach the man. And I would always recommend that the sister do it through a third party, just to safeguard her honor and dignity, because if he says no, it's going to hurt a little bit. So I'd rather not say that to the girl's face. To do it through a third party is always better. But that's what I'd recommend. I'd recommend through a third party, through an uncle, auntie, mom, dad, maybe not mom, dad, but a friend, a scholar. I've got a whole database, by the way. I'm like proposing every day, man. Wallah, like this guy, that girl, all the time. Yes, no, maybe, yes, no, maybe, And I always ask the guy before the girl, because he can take it. I'll say, are you interested in her? If he says yes, and I ask her, she says no, it's cool, dabir halak. Like, you gotta soldier up. But I don't ask her first, because I don't want her to get rejected, So the girl is more delicate. But I've got a whole database of this, and I know not only me, but a lot of other public people have that too, and we're trying to sort something out at the moment. Right now, we're working on hopefully a little app that we can use, but those are embarrassing, and we don't want to use them. Like the other day, we had a marriage course over here. We called it a marriage course, but we were just trying to get people to know each other. But we made them come, because if we say it's like they're getting to know each other, they're not going to come. But we made a marriage course, and then we had like groups where men and women were in a group, and then I'll tell them who's going to do the chores, debate. And they'll debate, and they can kind of see what a person is like. And then afterwards, I said to them, tell me who you like, and But here's the problem. When I got them all, they all told me who they liked and who didn't like, and no one accepted the other person. I'm like, okay, I'm trying. But the standards are high. Standards are high. So we have to be realistic. I'm not saying settle. I'm saying know what you want from marriage. Be realistic. Find the right person for you. There are so many things I can talk about here, like culture and languages and background and how to approach and Should I like the story? Should I not like the story? Is that the way to do it? But like we're in a modern era where that's not so bad. It's not such a bad idea as long as soon as you start talking, you make your intentions very clear. But yeah, a lot of us are going to meet each other online. It's not bad. We shouldn't be embarrassed about that. We shouldn't be shy about that. That's going to happen, but of course, always be very clear about intentions. And if anything starts going sideways and flirtation and parents aren't involved and there's no third party involved, it's a problem. Always have a third party involved, especially your sisters, because the guy's going to say he loves you and everything like that, but don't tell your dad yet and whatever, and then that's it. He disappears. Or even worse. So always have a third party. There's so much I can say here. This is a whole 3 lectures that I can give. But I'm just trying to give a little rundown that it's okay to be active about this. This is important. Marriage is important. Don't just think about nasib as something that falls on your doorstep. You have to make it known that you exist. I'm not saying post your pictures and be out there like that. I'm saying volunteer in the mosque. Let someone know that you're there. It's not a problem. It's not such a bad thing. And I think that if we can be more proactive about this and get people in our community, especially within the community, to get to know each other, because there's not too many of us. There's not too many of us. So it's important that within the community we know each other and there not be such a taboo to intermarry, to know people from other communities. I'm not saying that's necessary. It might be your preference to marry into your own culture, and that's completely understandable. It's like your preference for anything else. But you'll notice that your community might not have such a wide pool of people. And if you were to open up your horizons a little bit to other communities, you might find the guy or girl you're looking for, albeit they speak a different language and eat different food and wear different clothes. That might be something that you like. It might be something that you don't, but you have to sacrifice. But you will definitely widen your pool, though. And I know our parents are going to have a little thing to say about that, but hey, this is your whole life right now. This is your whole life in store right now, It's not about what's preferred only. It's about you want to get married and have children. And you have to be quite active about that. Where he says, says to him, is there an action that I can do that would grant me salvation? And the Imam says, yes, but I know you won't do it. Yeah, yes, certain salat. Yeah, Hussain. Here, look, the chain is a weak chain. But regardless of that, Allah's rahmah is rahmah, that's infinite. Allah knows, bro. I don't know. Allah knows all. I don't want Yazid to be in heaven. If you ask me, I don't want that. But this is all cause and effect. You know what you're asking right now? It's like I'm not going to hell. That's why it's not working, because of this week they're at the same time. You're not understanding it with all one contradiction. How can Yazid be forgiven? I agree. Okay. That's why he isn't.
So there's 2. I'm just going to have them ask. You can ask and then I'll clarify.
All right, cool. Salam. My question is what you mentioned in the beginning about intention. So a lot of people, they have intention to do something, and people I speak to, they're more often now using intention as an excuse to avoid doing certain things. So like, I have, Allah won't refuse my salah if I don't follow the rules for salah because my intention is there. So they're using intention or their niyyah as an excuse, and using kind of abusing their intention as a way to justify them not doing actions. So for example, like they won't pray 5 times a day, but I'm close to Allah, you know, I have this relationship with Allah, it's fine. Or they won't follow the rulings for wudu. It's fine, Allah won't reject my salah if I don't have the correct wudu. How can you get into a discussion with people that think like this without obviously coming across as more knowledgeable than them? Because like if we're an average person, I don't want to be put in a place where I kind of agree with them, but I also don't want to come across as like cocky or you know, act like I'm bigger than them. Yeah, what's the best way to like conversate with these kind of people?
My question was, if ma'rifah leads to love, so knowledge leads to love, then what are little things that we can do every day to increase our knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because we can't just read about Him like we read about the prophets. So how can we increase our ma'rifah in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
So for the first question, this is a common trope that people say, and there's a basic way to answer it and a more fleshed out way to answer it. And the fleshed out way, people get bored of it, but it's the real answer. And the basic way, through examples. People like examples. So you'd say, all right, I studied all year for the exam. I know all the answers. They're in my head. When the exam came, I didn't write down the answers. Do I pass the exam? The answers are in my head though. The answers are in my heart. I still don't get the grade. That's common sense, you know. That's the example I would use, just because people like, I can talk for an hour and they'll be like sitting like this. Then I use that really dumb example, like, you know, like that's how people are. So that's the one I always use for whenever someone comes with this question. I'm like, look, you might know everything. If you don't write it down on the exam, you don't get the grade. So if you're saying this is your intention, tell me, what is your intention? Tell me. You say it's my intention. What is this amazing intention of yours? And they say, my intention. What is it? What is my intention? Really, ask them. When they say, oh, but it's all Allah knows my intention, be like, you know what? What is your intention? They say, you know, Allah knows I love Him and I will do what He says. I'm like, all right, well, He said do it the proper way. So how can you intend to do something differently than what He said? But the whole point is that you're intending to be close to Allah. Allah said, I want it to be done this way. So how can I intend it differently? This whole al-amal bin niyat idea is misused. By the way, there's a whole article that I wrote against this many, many years ago. There was an article that went viral of a sister that wrote, practicing Islam in short shorts. And she said, I smoke weed, I drink alcohol, I wear short shorts everywhere, but Islam's in my heart, and Allah knows this, and blah, blah, blah. So I said, I wrote a whole article against it, and my article went viral. And then we were like supposed to be on like some sort of debate thing. I wasn't really interested, but yeah, that thing happened. So if you want, look for that. It's on the Muslim vibe. Practicing Islam in short shorts. A response to that. So the whole idea of that article was that it was based on intentions. And I wrote that, well, not really based on Islam, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But people don't really like to read the article. It's too long and it's boring. So just use the whole, exam question thing. And that's a better way to get the point across. As for ma'rifah of Allah, in our narrations, awwalud deen ma'rifatullah. The beginning of deen and religion is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it should be a pretty straightforward endeavor. And that's why man arafa nafsah faqad arafa rabbah. That's where you start. He who knows himself knows his Lord. So if you want to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you want to know about aqeedah, if you want to know more about God and increase your ma'rifah, you need to increase ma'rifah of yourself, because you are a mirror, my sister. You're a mirror. You were created as a mirror to mirror the names of God in what you do, in your forgiveness and in your anger, in your happiness and in your sadness and in your grief. That's why so much about this journey is to do with us. This is why I mentioned knowledge being something by presence is of much more convincing value to you than reading about Him on the outside when it's within. And if you want to know more about that, I would really recommend, and not because it's me, but I've given a series on this. Last year's Muharram series and this year's Muharram series was all about this. Last year was about he who knows himself knows Allah, and this year too. If you want, watch my lectures. Just write in Al-Iman Australia and my name, and then the lectures will come up, because I didn't post them. I didn't advertise them, so no one knows they're there. But if you type in Australia Al-Iman and Hussein Maki, there's 10 lectures on this, on knowing God through knowing yourself and increasing that. And there's a certain practice about that. You find it within yourself. So I would begin there. And there are books written on this. It's just that they're hard to access in the Arabic language, but they're there. And they're books that not tell you what to think. They're books that trigger what to think, because it's supposed to be coming from you. So when you start to see, for example, after I had my daughter, I found out so much more about Allah. Because when I saw my daughter, how needy she is of me, and how when I hold her, the way she responds, and how she sees me as someone she has hope in, that's going to feed her when she's hungry and clean her when she's dirty and put her to sleep, and when she's ill, she slept on my chest the whole night, she wouldn't let go. And I learned so much more about me and God, and how much hope I have in Allah, and how needy I am of Him. And Ya Allah, this is how I am to you, and this is how you see me, and this is how, when I ask you this question, think of how you feel. Do you feel loved by Allah? Do you feel loved by God? You do. Good. Good. That probably means you had really good parents. Because people who grow up not being loved by their parents find it very hard to feel loved by Allah. Notice how these small little relationships in our lives reflect the bigger relationship. It was always to do with me. So when I don't feel Allah loves me, but I'm a good person, I do everything right, why is that? That's to do with me. The more I find out about myself through my mirrors, my relationships with my spouse, my children, my parents, my friends, myself, my relationship with my own self. As in, when's the last time I said, I don't know why I said that? When's the last time that I was alienated from myself? When I didn't know what I was saying, why? Why am I alienated? What is it about myself that I don't understand? When I understand that, I get to know more about God, and it's an infinite puzzle, by the way. You keep going into deeper layers, and then you just have so much certainty in God. Knowledge by presence. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you so much for having me. Inshallah, I can see you again soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Please do stay behind for food is here. We're going to be eating, so please stay behind and eat, and relax. Sorry, just another quick announcement that these programs are purely run by your donation. So please, if you are leaving, one of our team members will be outside. Do not hesitate to approach him and donate so we can run these programs. Thank you so much.